In 3, 2, Juan.
We are your towering filmmakers, keeping it real like a roll of film, always looking to develop with you, the listeners, the dreamers, and the stories you tell. Welcome to the TowerCast podcast, the towering podcast for the towering filmmakers of El Paso and the world. Real quick, we have a lot of people here today. We have Carlos de la Torre, director, that we're going to be interviewing today. Austin,
hey, what's going on?
Over there, keeping it real. Michael De La O, keeping us in time, in check. Michael D. Head, and Eric Sanchez. Filmmakers, let's welcome the dream team behind last year's 2-day film challenge winner. You know what's funny. Director Carlos de la Torre is here with us.
Hey. Welcome to the TowerCast. Thank you guys for tuning in. Yeah, this is a special episode.
Why is this special?
For multiple reasons, primarily because this is our season finale of the TowerCast.
That's reason number one.
That's reason number one. It's very special, very bittersweet moment because we're already far into planning for season 2, and Juan has got some very, very special things for you listening out there. And secondly, today is the 4th anniversary of Tower Productions, which is a huge accomplishment, something we're very proud of. Yeah. Today, as of this recording, we're recording on May 16th. This is the 4th anniversary of Tower. This is we date the beginning of Tower back to when we had our first meeting between Austin, Eric, and myself about making a film. And Austin and Eric still have the messages, and they go back to the messages when they were kind of coordinating to plan. And it was on May 16th. We met at a Village Inn and started talking shop about what Sun City Lights was going to be before we knew Sun City Lights was going to be. So fourth birthday of Tower Productions. Thank you so much.
This is a special episode for many reasons. True, because apart from this being another episode where we're going to talk about a film that, you know, the Tower team kind of got together and made and successfully got out to the world with all their hard work and dedication. But yes, like Carlos said, this is a celebration, and it's very telling to see how, you know, again, like it's been a beautiful freaking journey, like from the first episode of the TowerCast to the first film of that Tower put out. They sort of kind of have this like similar story beats where it's like, because we were so, and because you guys were before I even showed up, like we're so dedicated and consistent, you see how far we've come. And so, yeah, I mean, we have a very wonderful film to talk about today. You know what's funny? Directed by Carlos de la Torre. This is actually one of the most interesting episodes out there because this one is going to have a lot of turns and twists because since it was a 2-day challenge, it required a lot of on the spot, you know, decision making. And so, yeah, I mean, let's. Do you guys want to just jump into it now and talk about?
Love it. Yeah. You know what's funny? It's definitely a special film for me. It's probably my favorite thing that I've done in terms of filmmaking and directing and writing. What's interesting about it is it was our second 2-day challenge, as our listeners and viewers have heard in our the tram episode. That was our first 2-day experience, and then you know what's funny was the second one, and this time around I feel like we were just much more prepared. We had kind of gone through the motions already, and man, just shout out to El Paso, the city of El Paso, and the filmmakers in El Paso, and Drew, our film commissioner, who did a fantastic job organizing this 2-day challenge. It was kind of really his child. He brought it when he became the film commissioner, and yeah, look at that hat. And look, I wore the shirt today for the same reason, for those of you viewing on YouTube. But it's one of those things, man. Like the 2-day challenge is just a really cool experience, and I highly recommend it to every filmmaker if you're starting out, especially, to just do it at least once. Michael Head has done a ton of 48-hour challenges, and he was kind of our consultant on our first one, and this time around he was much more involved, which we'll talk about right now. But I do want to mention, just go ahead and go watch You Know What's Funny on YouTube, and make sure to watch Juan's documentary, the companion piece to You Know What's Funny, a very towering 48-hour documentary that Juan awesomely shot and directed and edited. It's so cool, man. I go back and watch it every once in a while. I really do. It's just it's a journey, like Juan said. It really has been a journey. So,
well, there you have it, you guys. The thing about real quickly, just the thing about this particular film, and the reason why I hold it very dear to my heart, is because I really got to see everybody's like strengths and their capabilities as filmmakers cranked up to 10. And it was very interesting because I got to see Carlos and Michael Head alongside each other, like making this film happen. And all the while, Austin Young in the back, you know, like getting everything, you know, situated, getting everything on schedule. And it was just run and gun, run and gun, run and gun. And, you know, from Eric Sanchez to his cinematography, like it was beautiful. And you know, it's crazy to think that like had nobody like captured you guys filming, like it was beautiful to see you guys work. I attribute like the just to quickly mention the documentary, like I attribute the documentary coming out so well only because you guys were really, really working really hard. And there was almost like this rhythmic thing about watching you guys work. And it was very beautiful. Like from, Carlos's fiance, like doing costuming to like, you know, a lot of the actors just coming in to help, in which way they could. You know, it was beautiful. It was beautiful.
We had the best team. We had the best team, and you know, just to talk a little bit about that, we kind of had a meeting, which you see in the documentary, prior to that, and I think that was key, and also having everybody in one home base, just like a studio, right? Mm-hmm. I think that was super essential and super key. And thankfully, these guys were these grown men and women, or these grown men, I should say, were like, whenever I said, "Hey, man, we gotta spend the night at a home base and kind of get everything out of the way," these guys were about it, you know.
And we were literally all crammed into Carlos's room, like that same. We were filming the original like TowerCast episodes. It was just that room, and it got hot.
Austin brought an extra bed. Some of the guys slept on the couch in my living room and on the floor and stuff like that. And Michael, who I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, your family was away out of town or something like that weekend. I just remember you being there the entire weekend without like.
No, they were here, but we already talked about the fact that I was going to be doing this all weekend, and they knew that. So
Bachelor's night.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And then like Eric Sanchez couldn't be in our last. Well, both Eric Sanchez and Michael, they weren't totally a part of the first 2-day challenge, which was really cool. That this time around they were fully into it. Like they, you know, we all spent the night. We all got together and kind of talked about the story, and stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool.
I think it also shows, like, if you really watch The Tram and you know what's funny, considering this is like Tower's 4th, you know, birthday, what about the first like Tram film you guys made, or like the original 48-hour film, and like what can you really say about the growth between those two, like the gap, like what happened that led to this coming out so good? Because I think this one, if you had not told me that this was a 48-hour film, like I would have just assumed you guys took a month or 2 months on this, because it really did come out really good. And we'll get to them as long as we go on to the podcast, but there's many reasons as to why it came out so good.
I mean, I everybody definitely chime in on what you guys think, but I think on my end, the formula that we used for the first 48 for the Tram, it worked. I mean, for us, it worked. So we maintained that same formula, you know, setting meetings beforehand, casting your actors before you even know what your topic is going to be. All kind of a lot of stuff that Michael had recommended to us since he had done some 48s. We took that advice and then we kind of just winged it on some other stuff, and the formula worked. I mean, thankfully so, right? Because we won the audience award for the Tram that first year, our first 48 ever, and we win an audience award, you know? Mm-hmm. And then fast forward a year, and that we applied that same formula, and I know it's going to sound cheesy as hell, but I think the missing components were Eric Sanchez and Michael Head. They were my co-cinematographers, you know, they were my co-DPs, and I know Michael and I kind of like, we really argued on the timing and stuff like that, and we'll get into that, but but ultimately the vision was there, and they know what I like. They know what they've both have been my cinematographers before, and for the Tram, it was Luis Moreno, which he did a fantastic job, but I have a much shorter hand with Michael and with Eric, and that component I think totally put us up over the edge, you know.
Can I ask a question? So for somebody who's listening to us, whether it be on, you know, iTunes or Apple Podcasts, Spotify or Anchor, what exactly is the 48 and how does it work? Like, say you're a brand new filmmaker, you come here, you sign up for it. What's the process like from point A to point, you know, B?
Michael, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. 48-hour film contest is literally you have 48 hours to write, shoot, edit, and deliver a short film. There's actually a ton of these all over the place. 48-hour film project, 48 film project. If you just Google 48-hour film projects, a lot of, especially big cities, have a 48-hour competition. And usually it's something along the lines of, it's usually over a weekend. And so, for example, they'll do a kickoff at 6:00 on a Friday night, and everybody gets some similar elements. Usually, it's a character they have to include, a line of dialogue, and a prop. And everybody has to include those in that 48-hour film. And they have from like 6:00 Friday night until 6:00 Sunday night to write, shoot, edit, and deliver the film, which usually means you're not really sleeping a whole lot that weekend.
Especially the editors.
The very first project I ever did from start to finish was a 48-hour film project, and that was a learning experience. For the tram, I'll say this for the tram, I actually couldn't be involved in the tram because I had a bunch of family that was all coming into town, and literally the only weekend that my entire family could come into town was the same weekend as the tram. And so I had to tell these guys, I had to back out and say, I'm sorry, I can't help this weekend. I'll give you advice and whatever I can do. Because I've been fairly successful. Even with that first one that I did, I won an award for how I used the character, which I felt really good about, especially the very first time I directed a project. That was several years ago. That was in Dallas. That was a long time ago. Had technical issues, but that's a whole other thing I don't want to talk about right now. They're a lot of fun. They're a lot of work. The more people that you can get working together on it, the better it's probably going to turn out.
Definitely.
And the main advice that I give for people that are interested in doing a 48-hour film project, the main things that I recommend, have your cast ahead of time. Know who you're going to be using, know who's available, because you don't want to be scrambling for people at the last second.
Both cast and crew, by the way. Have your team ready. Yeah. And
have a variety of locations lined up.
Yep.
That way, the reason that I recommend that is I know there are some people that, well, let me go back to how a 48-hour works real fast. Everybody has the same cast, the same character, line of dialogue, and prop they have to use. Everybody gets a different genre. Well, within limits, there's a limit of there's usually like 10 or 12 genres, and people draw for their genre that they have to make their film in. I know there are groups that they will write, and I've seen this happen in Dallas. I've seen it happen here. People will pre-write 12 different scripts and then just shove a character in as one of the named characters. And in my opinion, that never really works well. You're not going to get a good story if you do that, because especially in terms of how you use the character, what's funny, the character was a comedian. So if we'd written a story about two people on a road trip and we just say, oh, he's a comedian, it's not the same thing.
Doesn't work,
it's not writing around the character.
I think in terms of that too, what we should mention is the items, the elements that Michael's talking about for this particular film is that the main character has to be a comedian. His or her name has to be Perry or Pepper Hernandez, which is why we use both. I just figured, well, let's might as well use both. This is going to be about a couple. Our genre was chick flick. Our line of dialogue was, please tell me you've kept your mouth shut. And our prop was a box of matches.
Box of matches.
Box of matches, right? So those were the kind of the 5 elements we had to gear our film around. And you see every single one of those elements in the film.
Let me ask you this: why do you feel like the Tower team felt like you were the best director to tackle the genre? Because I remember the way the genre was selected. We were all at the Power of the Past building with the film commissioner, and we drawed there was a bunch of filmmakers, man. It was beautiful. beautiful. It was beautiful. You can watch it on documentary. But you know, we grabbed our genre. Sanchez is the one who pulled out chick flicks, so blame him for that.
His favorite
I
genre.
remember he drew that and they announced it, and I literally was like, oh.
Yeah, it was all.
Well, here's the interesting thing about that one. What's interesting is that I think. Well, the thing about it is I love directing. If there's anything in cinema that I want to do in my career is directing. And I kind of took that in this year's thing. I was like, all right, we all agreed, all right, you're going to have this role, you're going to have this role, you're going to have this role. And I was always going to direct, no matter what the genre was. Mm-hmm. Michael, however, originally, and I still feel bad about this. I still feel really bad about this. But Michael originally was going to write. He was going to write the story. He was going to be the writer, the sole writer of the script. Mm-hmm. When we got Chick Flick, everybody looked at me because that's more in line with what I write and what I direct. Right?
That is not my wheelhouse at all. Not. It's just not.
And I think you see it in the documentary where me and Mike were kind of looking at each other and we're like, you know what? I'll write the first pass and then you can rewrite if necessary. Mm-hmm. So I love in the documentary we actually see a moment where anytime, here's the standard when it comes to my films, guys. Anytime Eric hates the story, I know I've done something right. Mm-hmm. Eric Sanchez, I mean. So when I pitched the original idea I had, I was like, all right, he's going to do this and we're going to do that. Eric's like, in the documentary, you see him say, I already hate it. And it was just kind of like a defining moment there, right? So I feel bad because I took total control. We went back to home base after they gave us our genre and everything. And everybody else went to the store to prep. We go and we buy snacks for our people, drinks, props if needed, whatever we need to get for this weekend, right? And I stayed back at the house writing the first draft and outlining on my little whiteboard. And I was into it, man. Like I was into it. I knew how to write the story. I knew how to write these characters. And what's beautiful about it too is we already had a cast in mind, and I love that cast and I love working with them. And for those of you that don't know, the story is about two comedians who are both kind of competing in the comedy circuit in El Paso, and one of them is better than the other. You know, the girl Perry Pepper rather. Pepper is better than Perry at comedy. Yes. And we have this kind of competition going on, but at the same time they live together. They're a couple. It's hard to see, especially if you're competing in the same realm. It's hard to see somebody kind of like above you in that, especially for men, for some odd reason, especially in the arts, there tends to be like this masculinity thing. I don't know. And that's one of the things that Eric and I talked about with this character, where he's just upset that he's not succeeding, Mm-hmm. So that's what this film is about, this dynamic between these two people who love each other, but ultimately it's a battle between making my couple happy or chasing my dreams to pursue comedy. And that's one of
the things that I really loved about the film is that, and I know this is just something we've all noticed when we attend like film festivals. Mm-hmm. Is that like their story structure is kind of lacking. Like, yeah, you'll see the characters and the props, but they kind of forget to make them all connect. And to you guys, again, that's why I tell you, if you told me that this was a 48-hour film, like in a competition, I would have noticed, because none of the props really like are in your face. And even the quote is utilized as a punchline at the end. Right. And it's really nicely written. But what I was going to say is, with this movie has elements like comedy, drama, and a character study of relationships. I remember, like, I think the reason why Carlos was the right pick to like helm this movie was because, for one, he's already had experience directing love stories, and he's done them well. And I feel like he was ready for that. And as a storyteller, with all these different jumbled genres like comedy, drama, and a character arc about relationships and how they can become toxic when they become too competitive.
Yeah, sure.
What was your favorite of these genres to tackle? What was your favorite aspect of this film to tackle?
Definitely, it's because it's like Michael says, man. When you have the right team and everybody's doing your job on the regular set, that I'm talking about a regular set, let alone a 48. The director can focus. I was able to focus on the look and feel of the film. I was able to work with my actors, and I was given the freedom and liberty to do that. Michael and Eric were handling the camera. We shot on this big rig, on the steady camera, a gimbal rather, and they were setting that up everywhere we went. And Austin was on the phone, 2, 3 in the morning trying to lock down locations. We're trying to get stuff going, and I was able to just focus on the story. And I when my crew does that for me, and they always do, man, I'm a kid at a candy store, man. I could get the set and really focus on the story. And I think that's what my favorite thing was just to work on how the story was going to connect. And I think we should talk a little bit about that, Michael, because it's my favorite. I think it's my favorite aspect of this whole 48 was Michael's done this before. He knows what he's talking about. I shouldn't be arguing with him. He knows what we're doing. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I got stubborn with my vision, and I got stubborn with, we'll make time. Don't worry. We'll be all right.
And that was my big concern was not the story. You see this in the documentary. My big concern was not the story. My big concern was 48-hour contests. They have a time limit. You have to be under 7 minutes. If you're under that time,
I think it was 8 minutes
over
this
that
time around.
It was 8 minutes?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it was 8 minutes this time.
If you're over that time, you're disqualified. You can't qualify for anything. They might show your film, but you're not going to win any awards for it.
Right.
And if you know anything about the way Carlos writes, yeah, it's we have this joke. We have a script we're working on, and we pull out the script, and it's like this thick, and it's like, okay, this is Carlos's first draft, 5-minute film. By the way, love you, man. You're awesome. But he tends to write really long, and and in reality, it's a pretty big story that we were telling. And what's funny. And so my big concern, I knew the acting was going to be fine. I knew the dialogue was good. I knew it was going to be good. My biggest concern was
staying on time.
Can we put it in time?
And what's interesting about that is that Michael's head. If you don't know this about Tower, we have 6 execs, all of which are associate producers or producers, and Eric and Austin as associate producers just were like, we know Carlos. We know whatever is going to happen is going to happen. We'll pull it off. But Michael, as a producer, his producer brain went into, we're not going to make time. This is a concern that Austin should have been concerned about. But Austin also knows how I work, and he knows that if I go along on something, especially if we need to make time, we'll make it work, whatever it is. And I think the thing about this 48, just like our first 48, we broke all the rules in the sense that, correct me if I'm wrong here, Michael, you want a small cast, you want a limited number of locations, preferably one location if you can pull it off. You want a short, easy script, kind of easy story to tell. And we broke all of those rules. We had a big cast. We had multiple locations. We had a long story. I think the script that was 12 pages at the end of it all.
Yeah.
And like Michael said, it's supposed to be 8 minutes max, which means a minute a page should be eight pages. I went on to 12 pages. Granted, we did cut out for the cut we had to turn in. We did cut out a good chunk of people and scenes. Yeah. But it made it work.
There's a director's cut. How long was the director's cut?
Director's cut was, I think, 13 minutes. If I'm not mistaken.
My gosh.
13 minutes, yeah. Whereas the original,
right?
Yeah, and by the way, you can see both cuts on our YouTube, guys. If you go to our YouTube, the director's cut is there, and in the link in the bio at the bottom, you could see the original Vimeo link where you could watch the original.
Watch the director's cut. I would say.
Watch them both. Yeah, watch them both. There's a total of 20 minutes it'll take you. But anyways, Michael and I were kind of going back and forth on that, and you can see that throughout the whole documentary. I think it's something really cool that Juan captured. If you notice on the page and if you notice in the credits, there when we're talking about story and we're talking about writing, we accredited a long laundry list of people for the story. Even Juan got story credit. Mm-hmm. So I think it was Daniel, Michael, Eric, Austin, and Juan and myself that got story credit because I really did treat it as a writer's room. I went back and forth on hey, here's the story. This is my original pitch. What do you guys think of this? What do you guys think of that? And I remember Juan and I were going back and forth about one specific topic.
I remember because I wasn't, and I think that's the one thing I learned about you was I gotta trust, not that I didn't trust you, but I was
no.
vision, you know what I mean?
I work really well under pressure. I think.
Oh, yeah.
and Juan had some questions about the story I had. Michael had some questions about the story, and not necessarily like Austin, like Michael said, the story, but the length of the story. And just when my brain gets to a vision of what I know, what I want, I'm stubborn about it, and it's going to take a lot to convince me to get out of that. Ask anybody who's ever worked with me. I love the story so much. That's my number one rule as a writer director. If you don't love the story, don't do it. And I love.
And I think that's why you ended up winning this like particular
argument.
Not winning, but you know what I mean. Just like
yeah.
It wasn't an argument. I was concerned about it. I was probably, in my mind, I had worst case scenario in my head. And so I was just concerned about it. I knew we could pull off the film. I was just worried about time. That was that was my only concern, because we had a large story. We had the character arcs, we had all these things. And on the documentary, you can see we had this like lined out, and I'm just looking at all the pieces of it, and I'm sitting there thinking, this is an awesome story. There's no way we can do this in 8 minutes.
Right.
We pulled it off. We had to cut a chunk. We had to cut a huge chunk, but that's
right.
That's
and I think that Carlos being as collaborative as he was, because he was, man, I think we all threw in something, who knows, but I remember like, I was like, are you sure you want to? He's like, no, it has to be this way. It has to be like, no, it has to be this way. And
I may come across as an asshole when it comes to that. Like I may come across like, oh, he's not listening to me, but I promise.
Now we have to put the E on the podcast thing. Come on, man.
I just remember, or anytime I'm collaborating with anybody, whether I'm co-writing with somebody or not, well, maybe I've never co-written anything, but I take everything into stride. I really do. I take all the notes and I take all the suggestions into stride, and then I think, what story do I want to see on screen? I kind of get selfish with it a little bit. Like, what's the story I want to see on screen? And I think that's what determined the outcome for me, because, like I said, Eric Sanchez, as an associate producer, and Austin as the producer, they both looked at me like, whatever, dude, do your thing. Like, it's almost like they're not going to argue with me because they know I'm going to get stubborn with the story. And at the same time, Eric's reading the script and making sure he's getting visuals with Michael Dunn. Austin's producing and getting the cast in line and getting locations in line and everything. So they're busy doing their thing while Michael and I, and I love being challenged, man, because if you can challenge me and I'm wrong, I will be the first person to admit that I'm wrong. But if you can challenge me and I prove you wrong, I expect you to kind of take that into stride also and trust me, so that we can pull this film off and tell the story what I think might be the right way. So I think trust, Juan, is a huge deal, especially in 48s. And it was a huge deal. I'm so grateful that Michael ended up trusting me. He fought me every step of the way, but as my DP, and my...
I wasn't trying to fight you.
No, I understand.
Just express concerns about time.
I know, definitely. But it's a challenge that
it's a healthy like you know what I mean? It's a healthy like gravitational pull. Like
definitely. I love it. I'm not opposed to that. If you're not challenging me, if you don't feel challenged as a filmmaker, you're doing something wrong. If something's getting too easy for you, you're doing something wrong. So I think in terms of writing the story and getting the story out, I think it was easy enough to where I knew what the basis of it was. I wrote the script, and I think I finished the script at 1 a.m. when they gave us the topic at 7 p.m. And and I think at 1 a.m. we were just kind of, and we'll talk to, I don't know if Alexis and Alfredo were able to kind of do something for the show, but
sadly not.
Okay, but I'll kind of tell their story for them. It was 1 a.m. We finished the script. Everybody was kind of up. Daniel had to come straight from work. He works for a news station, and he comes straight from work to contribute what he could as apart from being an editor, he kind of contributed to the story as well. And we were all talking. We're trying to lock down a location. Eric Sanchez goes to a place called the Rock House a lot for shows, rock shows and stuff like that. So we knew the location. We had been there a few times, and I don't remember the story exactly. Maybe you can help me out here, Austin. But I think Alexis and Alfredo were just there having a drink that.
Oh yeah, they were.
They were there having a drink, and we called them. I don't know. I guess you were texting with Alexis, Austin.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So if I remember correctly, we were looking at different venues to see who we could contact and everything. I think we were looking at B-17. We were looking at Comedy Strip. We were basically looking for an interior that didn't have a whole lot of windows, so we could play off at Bay Night. And I don't remember what triggered. I think we started asking the cast too and the crew if they knew anywhere. Mm-hmm. And that's when Alexa's like, yo, I know the owner at Rock House. We're here right now. Give me an hour. At like 10 o'clock at night, he's like, give me an hour.
While he's doing that, we're over here trying to lock down Cocoa Bar. I remember we were trying to lock down Cocoa Bar as well because Alexis, his band plays shows there, and he kind of knew the owner. And we got in touch with that owner, and then we kind of got the runaround a little bit. We kind of got the runaround, not just with them, but B17 as well, a bunch of other bars that have a stage. That was our intention because, correct me if I'm wrong here, Austin, the whole intention was we wanted comic strip, but we knew everybody and their mother was going to be trying to shoot there for this particular film. There's only one comedy club in El Paso. You know what I'm saying? And everybody's going to be trying to shoot there. So we're like, let's scratch the comic strip entirely. We're not going to use a comic strip. We're going to use a bar or a club with a stage that we can manipulate with lights. And
I think at some point when Rock House was still in question, we still even considered, because at the time we had just finished filming Assumed. So we even considered possibly shooting in Michael's church.
That's
because
right.
Downstairs in the basement, because it had a stage.
Yeah.
It took them some convincing too, right? It was like Rock House was like, whoa.
Well, I think about it. Yeah, go ahead, Austin.
I think more than anything, the owner was a bit confused of exactly what we needed. So you'll even see it in the doc. Alexa's like, yo, the owner says this is a no-no, this is a no-no, but you guys can come and this and that. Yeah, and we were like, well, what does he even mean? Like, we don't understand him, you know? So I think if anything, Mateo, by the way, big shout out to him because, you know, he lent us location, but I think if anything, he just didn't fully understand what we needed. So you can even see it in the doc. I even tell Alexa, I was like, yo, we'll just talk to him in the morning. If he's saying we can shoot there, we can shoot there. And we had the plan B. We're like, if we show up and he puts too many restrictions on us or we can't do what we need to do, we'll go to Michael's church. We'll shoot there if we need to. But
what I love about that particular part is that you see it in the doc. Austin, as a producer, this is why I love working with him as a producer. He's very good at making sure I don't worry about that stuff. Like if I'm starting to worry about it, he's like, don't worry about it. I got it. You go focus on the story. You go focus on what
just go. Yeah.
Yeah. And in this particular scenario, you see it in the doc where he has Alexis on speakerphone and Alexis is saying all this stuff that I'm like, what does he mean, dude? Like, what do you mean? We're not going to be able to do that. And my brain goes to that. And Austin's like, we'll talk to him in the morning, bro. We got the yes. That's all you need. And then I automatically shift my attention back to Michael about the characters and about what we're talking about casting and stuff like that. So it's one of my favorite moments in that scenario. And shout out to Alexis and to Alfredo. They stayed out there till like 2 a.m. And I guess they convinced him. That call was at 2 a.m. You know, and we got the yes, and we were able to shoot at Rock House during the day.
And that was the only reason it was acceptable for them to be late the next morning.
Well, speaking. Now that we have Austin coming up here, Austin, like you produced like a whole ton of Tower films prior to this one, and it really educated the team to be ready to tackle these kinds of films. I mean, as we went along, like you guys went to sci-fi, then you guys went to action, then you guys went to romantic comedy like this one, and then you guys went to Precognition. It's crazy to think that you've been able to see these guys grow. And I know that you're sort of like the backbone for the team in terms of keeping everything in line. What did this movie bring about to you that was more challenging than any previous films in the Tower 20?
I think with any really 48-hour challenge, no matter how prepared you can be, there's always going to be a challenge. Like, a funny thing, Michael and Carlos already talked a lot about, being prepared and having location locked down, having cast locked down. And one funny thing about this whole experience, at least in this specific film, was we had probably like 5, 6, 7 locations locked down just in case. And we didn't even use any of them.
Most of which we didn't use, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't use a single one that we technically had quote unquote locked down. So, they touched a lot on it for 48. You have to have everything locked down beforehand. You have to get a dedicated team that's willing to not sleep for 48 hours. I think most of us got no more than 6 to 7 hours of sleep in that 48-hour period.
I'll throw this out there. The reason we got that much was because we had so many people working on it.
Yeah, exactly. Like taking turns. Yep, for sure.
How does the experience of a 48-hour film like benefit you as a producer in terms of your like arsenal of experience? Does it build upon your journey as a producer?
I would recommend it to any filmmaker to do it at least once, because you really learn a lot from it, how to work as a team and how to really get that aspect of a workflow going, because it's whenever you're not on a time crunch, you're kind of like, yeah, I'll get to it, you know, whatever. But when you're in a 48-hour period, there's no I'll get to it. It's you better do it now. And you got to do it as soon as you can, because you're on, you know, you have that deadline. So I think it's very important for even if you're a new filmmaker and you're still getting into it, I really recommend doing at least one in your lifetime.
And what would you say was your like proudest like moment? Because I mean, again, like seeing you guys work was beautiful, and being a part of that was like just a beautiful experience for me as well. But what was your proudest moment for the entire shoot for you personally as a producer?
I think once we were able to wrap, but I think once we were able to finally leave Michael's house at the end of the day, it was probably like 7:00 in the evening on Saturday, and being able to go back to home base to start editing. The funny thing is, I mean, we'll talk more about the editing stuff later, but one funny story, and I started to freak out, and I think this is probably one of the most. I think this is one of the most. Yeah. I think this is one of the most forgotten moments, but when we get back to Carlos's house on Saturday evening, you know, I got the footage on me with the hard drive and everything, and we get to his house, and the door's locked. And we can't get in, and I think Carlos had to climb in through his window, so I'm over here freaking out, yo, we're already losing time.
Right.
We can't get in. We lost like a good half hour trying to get into his house, and
that's true.
It's just so funny. Like I already started freaking out. Like shit, we're already losing time. We need to hurry up. But yeah,
your proudest moment was breaking into Carlos's house.
Yeah,
so we can start on post. Yep, that's for sure.
What was the toughest thing you felt about this particular film shoot? Like the biggest challenge that kind of came your way as a producer?
Being able to handle such a big cast on such a time crunch. Like people don't realize all the stuff that we shot at Rock House, we shot in probably 4 hours, I want to say. Yeah. And being able to fit everything in, having everybody having to change clothes, so many different angles we got. So that was probably the toughest thing.
Mind you, in terms of producing, I don't know if Austin was going to mention this or not, but we have to fill out forms. It's one of the rules. We have to get forms signed, releases signed, location releases signed. All of that Austin was taking care of while we're over here shooting. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a big deal that teaches you. The 48 teaches you even how to produce. You have to do this on a regular basis when you're a producer, and that you have to turn in these forms. If you don't turn in these forms, you kind of get disqualified. So I don't know, Austin. I don't know if that was an issue for you. I know Sandra was kind of helping you out with that a little bit, but you were tackling.
Yeah, actually, Sandra did really help me out. Sandra's actually a pretty really organized person compared to me. I mean, I'm organized, but she you can ask Carlos and everybody here that. At the end of on Sunday, I was like, hey, these are all the papers I have. Can you make sure that everything's here? Like, I want to make sure nothing's missing. And she kind of went through everything. And I think she found one or two mistakes, stuff like that.
Austin, I got to ask you, dude, because on our first 48, we made that mistake. Was that what taught you not to do it this time around? We had a paper that I had to go and get signed. You remember?
Yeah. Honestly, just because of what happened the year before, just lessons learned to move on to the next one.
Well, I know that Michael has disappeared. He's probably grabbing one of his expensive lights in the background over there. Since we have Eric Sanchez here, one of the things I did want to mention was that everybody, and I'm grateful for the opportunity I've worked with you guys and to still be a part of the team and everything, But one of the things I really loved about what I was able to capture was that everybody was clearly on their prime. Like Carlos, you see him and Michael Head, kind of talking about angles and shots and what they kind of want. And you could see it in their eyes, like that eye of the tiger thing. You really do see that. And with Austin, he had a moment where I think I was just filming him and I was like, so what's going on? He's like, look, we got to get these things shot. Because we had an ensemble cast, everybody that we knew, we pretty much have a good chunk of the TowerCast, peeps that we've interviewed in this movie. And, some of them will be interviewing for the first time, so it's exciting. But we had so many bits to film as a part as just building the world of the movie in terms of having the other comedians come in and the host and everything. And we had to do that on the spot. And one of the questions I want to ask Carlos later on about his directing style. But one of the things I did see was that how he was just everybody was on it. And one of the other people who was also that way was Eric Sanchez, who's gladly with us today here. In terms of DPing the film, what were some of the things that you were trying to sort of like? Oh, there you go. Michael's coming back. So the question I was asking the DPs, what were you guys sort of looking for in terms of capturing what Carlos was trying to convey through the story? Like, what was the relationship like with you guys with Carlos on set?
DP wise, Michael. So you and Eric, if you guys could talk about that.
We set up lights, and he said, "Point the camera here," and we said, "Okay."
Pretty much.
The Rock House had some really interesting stage lights already set up, so there wasn't a whole lot we had to do there. Mm-hmm. In terms of the actual stage, we did some supplemental lighting from the audience, and you can actually see some of them. They actually turn into kind of practicals. They look like a stage spotlight, which is what we were using them as. Those were actually our lights that we were using to light the talent on stage. And then we had extra lights that we used when we did the crowd shots. And a lot of it was just, we talked through the shots. I'm trying to remember exactly how we did it. We kind of talked through the shots, and then as we were setting up the lighting, Carlos would take the actors and rehearse a little bit. We shot on the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, which is always fun to say. We used, most of the time we had it on a DJI Ronin, which is a big Steadicam gimbal. I have a Steadicam arm, and it worked really well for what we were doing. We had remote focus for that. Who
was pulling focus? Were you pulling focus?
Whoever was operating was pulling focus, because we don't have a remote focus for it. We have
that's right.
A wired focus.
Direct focus.
We're working on getting like a director's monitor and a AC monitor, so we actually could have somebody.
Please, yes, please.
That's all. If anybody wants to invest in Tower,
yes, please.
That's the thing we can use. We have some big stuff coming up. Yay! Yeah, a lot of it was building on that. When we shot there. We shot at the house was actually my house. We've shot there before. I've shot there before, so the lighting was pretty standard for what we've done there before. I don't know if we talked. Did
I reference anything for you guys in terms of reference for films? Because I'm always doing that. That's kind of my.
La La Land.
I was gonna kind of ask.
La La Land.
You referenced the sorry, I didn't interrupt the Adam Sandler one, the comedian one.
Funny people.
You referenced that one a lot at Rock House.
But when it was like all about like the shots and stuff, like I already knew what kind of shots. And Michael had a pretty good idea. Like he was like my mentor in that movie. But yeah, it was all that, that wonder crap. You gotta make it look pretty and make it look.
Can we trademark that wonder crap? That almost like CinemaScope. Let's trademark wonder crap.
Especially like the ending of the movie. That was just straight out from La La Land.
Oh yeah.
And I think we were running low on battery, so I had to like fucking do it quick.
Was there anything as far as like trying to create that like mood or effect? Like when you think of like people know that when you think of like horror films, you think of like the low lights, you think of it being very mysterious. Mm-hmm. You want to like keep everything very tight and create like, the sharp corner that you turn and something pops out. For like a rom-com, like is there any kind of like when you heard that it was a certain image or a certain look you were trying to go for to create that mood?
It's usually more flattering lighting. You find a lot of if not totally flat, more flat lighting. What I mean by for those of you the guys that don't know lighting stuff, flat lighting means you're evenly lit on both sides of your face.
It's lit.
Go for it.
No, you said
close up on eyes. Like facial expressions.
Yeah, I think in terms of lighting, I love, Michael knows this when he lights for me, which he's usually gaffing for my sets. I love strong backlight. I like hair light. I love hair light because I think it just classic Hollywood kind of vignettes. Like you see Casablanca and you see these beauty shots of people and you see hair light in the black and white, right? On the Ingrid Bergman's especially. Just that type of lighting is what I like. I think this is why it's beautiful to have Michael and Eric co-DP. Michael knows what lighting and tone I want, but Eric knows what lighting and tone I like. Eric knows what shots I want. And I think it just meshed really well in that sense. Michael, everybody knows Michael's the king of lighting. And Eric knows. What I love about Eric, I've said this before, is that even if it's not his type of film, he knows how to get the shot. He knows what you want and he knows how to pursue that shot. Mm-hmm. So I think in terms of cinematography, Austin's right. I reference Judd Apatow's Funny People a lot, because especially when we were shooting the comics on stage and we had the camera going back and forth on the Ronin between the audience. Those were shots I remember from Funny People that stuck with me, which is a film about comedians if you haven't seen it. And then Casablanca and La La Land were something I talked about a lot in terms of the tone and feel. I feel like I cheated a little bit. I don't know that I wanted this film to be a straight up chick flick. To me, a straight up chick flick is Mean Girls. It's How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. It's this type of feel. I wanted it to be more of a rom-com, 500 Days of Summer, La La Land, that type of feel for this film. So I kind of
talked a lot about in our conversations. You were talking about differences between like the rom-com and chick flicks, but
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It was still like I mean, chick flick is kind of like a general term, but yeah, like you definitely got it on the nose. Like
I feel like chick flick is an exaggerated rom-com. Basically, it's a melodramatic rom-com sometimes, and I think if you know the distinction, you know what you can go for. I did talk about 500 Days of Summer a lot for this film, especially in the score. If you notice the score done beautifully again by Eddie Garcia overnight. And maybe not even overnight. Maybe he pulled it off in like 2-3 hours once he saw the first cut of the film. Mm-hmm. And he always gets it, man. And he always gets my tones. And I reference 500 Days of Summer for the score. I reference La La Land for the tone and feel of the cinematography, and lighting. And I think Michael's right. The flattering kind of angles and the beauty shots are super, super key for a tone of this likeness. And I love it, man. They don't question me. They may puke at the how do you call it, Eric? At the wonder crap. But they don't question it, man. And I knew what I wanted. So the cinematography in this film is fantastic. Mm-hmm.
I noticed that some of my favorite shots throughout the film were the close-ups that you got on Castro, because, I mean, I think you guys have like a man crush on him or something, because you always got him at these very like flattering angles or lights. I mean, for the really emotionally intense scene when he's kind of like, you could tell he's frustrated with the relationship and he doesn't know how to express it except on stage. And you got this shot of him. That's
my favorite shot of the whole thing.
We got that in one take, by the way. We got that in one take. That was the first and only take we did. I think, as Eric's right, we're running out of battery. And then we had to get it. It was one take. And
you just have to scream, be emotional, and then you just like point the camera.
No, I think, Eric, I remember you operated camera for that shot. I remember specifically you operated camera for that shot. And I told you, let's go out of focus in certain areas. Like, let's not have it be beautiful. Let's have shaky cam. You went on shoulder rig, I think, too, for the same reason. Let's have shaky cam.
When he feels like shit? Yeah.
Yeah. Let's have shaky cam. Let's have it go out of focus when we come in and out. And we got it in one take, man. And I don't know if do you remember that shot, Eric? But
if we're thinking about the same shot, is it when it's kind of like green and he's on stage?
That's it.
And
that's
it. Oh yeah, I kind of knew. I guess like super tight shot, and then like very kind of like slight shake. It's not shaking, but it's movement of the camera, feeling like unstableness.
Yeah,
and focusing in and out slightly, just to like, because he's clouded, he's miserable, he's a piece of.
I think it's very telling that like Eric's this is not his cup of tea, if you will. But what is your thought process like? Because as you two both, like Michael Head and Eric Sanchez, I don't think you guys, well, Michael Head's done Poster Girl for sure, but like, you're definitely more into like, sci or action, or, you're more into, that.
I begged Michael to do Poster Girl, because you're right. That's more in my wheelhouse. And I wanted to see Michael do that. So
I remember we talked about that. How do you guys like lend your abilities? Because the thing I see from both of you is Michael Head can get really striking, images, and Eric Sanchez can get really reactive images, because his thing is more like horror or action comedy. Like you need a lot of that like stylistic kind of feel to it. And both of you guys on this project together, I think for many reasons, a lot of it just being the set, the lighting and everything, it looks expensive and it looks like you guys had a big budget. And that's why I keep saying and over that If I didn't know you guys and you just were like, hey, watch this movie, I would have assumed you guys had a big budget. I would have assumed you guys had, all the money in the world and all the time in the world, when in reality you only had 2 days. So how do you guys lend yourself to projects that like may not be your like? How do you process what a more like lovey-dovey like type of director might bring to you? All right, for this particular story, how do you guys lend yourself to it?
Well, for me, it's weird, but I just use references. It's just knowing, oh, it looks like that thing that you don't like, so make it look like that. And then with Carlos, he references all these fucking movies, and then I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But like, I just take it back to La La Land, which is the movie he always preaches about. He's preaching it all the time. He breathes it, and he talks about it in his sleep and everything. So I'm like, okay, I'll just do La La Land. And like, La La Land's a really pretty movie, like how it looks, and I essentially just take that and then I'm very familiar with novelas, Mexican novelas. So I use that, and I don't make it look like novela, but like I use that as a good example to
I get you.
help me with certain reaction shots.
Yeah.
Also, Eric, if we're like pigeonholing you and saying that you're the horror guy, but you want to branch out into romantic comedies, let us know. Let's fuel your inner passions, inner desires.
Lovey-dovey crap.
Yeah.
Awful.
Well, for
was there
me,
another question, Michael De La? Is there another question you wanted to ask the DP?
Oh well, first, Ted, how do you get into the zone? How do you find your space when dealing with a genre that's out of your wheelhouse?
Well, I did film school, plural, and one of the cinematography exercises we did was lighting scenes for different genres. So even though like I know I can't write for a rom-com, I can't write for a chick flick. That was one of the things that I was looking forward to writing, and then this a chick flick, and I'm like, nope. But no, just knowing those styles, being aware of it. It doesn't stylistically, it doesn't have to be something that I'm a big fan of. If I can get some reference shots, if I can get some ideas about what they're looking for, I know stylistically what's going to look like more of a rom-com versus a thriller or a sci-fi horror, whatever.
I think that's really important. You gotta as a filmmaker get a little bit of diversity under your belt as far as like all genres, all different types of styles, even if that it's not your go-to and it's maybe like not part of your strength list, but having that there so that way when a situation comes up where you're like, wait, we can maybe make this look almost like a romantic comedy or so, but then have it invert later on, and then that creates a big tonal shift, and it does a lot for the story.
Does the fact that you guys are directors help in that aspect at all? You both are respectively have directed films on your own, and does it help you get into the directors? In this case, did it help you get into my brain when I asked for something, or love it, Juan?
For me, it helps with communicating with directors because I am a cinematographer and director, so I know there's specific terminology with cinematography that directors don't always know and understand. And I've had issues in the past, not here, this is something I learned a long time ago, where a director will describe something and I think I know what they want. And when it gets on set and we start filming, what I had in mind of what they described is not at all what they actually want. And so it's developing that standard language, and it's like that shorthand you have with Eric in terms of the shots you want. You both have worked together long enough that you have that shorthand in terms of what you want, and that's why you see a lot of big name directors. They always use the same cinematographers because they develop that shorthand very quickly. I'm listening to Roger Deakins' new podcast.
Oh, me too.
Amazing.
Dude. Yeah, it's good.
And he talks about working with the Coen brothers a lot, and they develop a shorthand, even though they've done everything from Fargo, murder mystery,
dark comedies,
thriller, No Country for Old Men, and Hail Caesar, which are totally different tonally and visually. They work together and they know how to communicate that. And so for me, the number one thing working with a director is, especially the first time, communicating, understanding what they want and making sure I can meet those needs, being flexible enough on my end to be able to actually give them the images that they want.
And for you, Eric, does the directing mind help you as far as communication goes, or does that give you any advantage during your cinematography process?
That's a weird question. I don't know, like because well, I've directed 2 films, but I don't know. Since I guess when I direct, I think as a cinematographer, or like when it comes to like the look, how I want it to play out, like I envision it, and then so it just helps me more as to be as a director to like, I guess. So
you can communicate to the DP or to other people that feeling. Yes. I get you.
Yeah, so it's like the other way around. As a director, putting those thoughts into the cinematography, I guess that'll just come with the director. Like in this case, Carlos. Like I just know what. Like I don't know.
No, I get you. I feel like for every department, there's something you focus in on. Like for the directing, and that's why understanding the different departments and what their strengths are and what they're supposed to be doing is so important, because, you know, in the directing aspect, you want to understand, okay, what am I trying to get out of my actor? What emotion do I want them to just put out on set? And then as a cinematographer, you're like, okay, well, if they're giving that to me, how do I capture it in the best possible way that people are going to see visually? And if you're a producer, you're almost like can't focus too much on either, though, because you want to just make sure that everybody's on time, everybody's on schedule, and all those parts playing together, I think is really emphasized in a 48-hour or any type of film set. And the more you focus in on each part and the more you give attention to each part and let them be individuals and maybe not let them merge too much, except for like collaboration, then you'll get the best performance out of your team.
Yeah. I think the ultimate.
Okay.
So you guys like the Mighty Ducks? I'm sorry. Continue.
I think the important thing to when it comes to the cinematography, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, for any film, my thing is I want it to make me feel something. And I think for, you know, what's funny, that was the ultimate goal, is we want to make an impact. We want the audience to feel something. It's that warm, fuzzy feeling that Eric doesn't like feeling when he watches films. So that's my ultimate goal as a filmmaker and as a director, is to get that. And the cinematography plays a huge role. Like Delau said, and I love that you can talk about it, Delau, because you, out of all the people in this group, you weren't with us just yet in Tower, and you were totally on the outside, and you were able to witness the film before as a general audience member. And I love that you said, like, oh, it's like you guys are in love with Castro, man. We got these shots that look like this. I love these. We got these shots of him and Valerie that look like that. And I think that's ultimately what we wanted, is for the audience to feel empathy for Castro's character, for instance. What we wanted the audience to feel understanding for Valerie's character. We wanted to. I think what's very cool about this film, I'm the director, and I sometimes forget the character names, but I don't forget what the film made me feel. Like, you know what I'm saying? And hopefully, I made that same impact with anybody else. I'm very selfish in the sense that if I accomplish the films and I get what I wanted, I don't really pay attention to anybody's kind of feedback after that. Like, especially if it's negative, I kind of block it out, because I felt what I needed to feel watching the film. And I don't know, like, in terms of cinematography and in terms of the storytelling, did you feel anything for these characters upon watching it the first time?
Each time I watch it, I try to focus on different aspects just to kind of get a well-rounded basis of the film as a film appreciator, and it all just blends so well. I mean, I the first time I noticed the cinematography, like I told you about Castro and Valerie's character, and how you just got these really pretty shots on each of them. I can understand now what you mean by that even lighting, and it's something you don't think about, but then the more you see, you're like, wow, if this was lit any other way, it would feel like a completely different story. And then the way that blends into the sad that we can't get Eddie on, but the way it blends into the score and the way it blends into the acting and everything, it comes together to give you this, at first, very, I guess you want to say, like, I don't know how to describe the first scene and the feeling you get from it, but it's that understood conversation that you have with your friends when you're going through something and you're trying to process it. And I loved how that feeling kind of transpires on both character ends. And then as the film progresses, you keep feeling that. You keep feeling like they're both going through the same situation, but they're not processing it together. And that's what makes it, this back and forth of them trying to find that balance between their careers, between each other, between their comedy.
It's heavy.
It comes together just beautifully. I mean, I think it's a heartwarming ending, even though you almost feel like maybe things are actually over for these characters and they have like gone their separate ways, more or less,
Love that, man. I love that.
And I think that's why, like, there is definitely a comparison. I mean, between La La Land and this particular movie, but
I'm not hiding from that, by the way.
I know you're not.
Like, I'm not. I don't know if the word steal is right, but maybe I stole the feeling of that moment.
Right.
And I wanted to imagine that moment between Perry and Pepper for this particular scene, especially the ending. I didn't shy away from that at all. I told the actors, I told my DPs, I told the editors, I want the La La Land feel that we see between Sebastian and Mia at the end of the film. And
it's as impactful, if not, and you can compare them in terms of like, oh yeah, I see the similarities.
I think the key thing for this particular moment was that I felt less bad about it when I went back and watched other musicals. I watched The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, and the final scene of The Umbrellas of Cherbourg is the exact same moment that La La Land captured. The Umbrellas of Cherbourg happened way back in the 60s. So Damien Chazelle borrowed from that. I borrowed from Damien Chazelle, and that's what filmmaking is, right? You admire your
stealing from many sources.
So yeah, I'm definitely not ashamed of that, and I'm proud that I was able to convey the feeling I was trying to convey in that moment, for sure.
And I think that's beautiful. The fact that we had the DPs talking about it and the producer, we really got a good gist of why this film, its collaboration brought about this beautiful film.